Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. The Cat Who, Book 1, The Cat Who Could Read Backwards. Chapter 6, Part 1. On Thursday, the Daily Fluxion published Qwilleran's first profile of an artist. His subject was Uncle Waldo, the elderly, primitive, and portrayer of livestock. Qwilleran had carefully avoided comments on the old man's artistic talent, building his story instead around the butcher's personal philosophy after a lifetime of selling chuck roast to housewives in a lower middle-class neighborhood. The appearance of the story revived interest in Uncle Waldo's pictures, and on Friday, the unimportant gallery that handled his work sold all their dusty canvases of beef cattle and woolly lambs and urged the old man to resume painting. Readers wrote to the editor commending Qwilleran's handling of the story, and Uncle Waldo's grandson, the truck driver, went to the offices of the Daily Fluxion with a gift for Qwilleran, 10 pounds of homemade sausage that the retired butcher had made in his basement. Friday evening, Qwilleran himself was accorded some attention at the press club as he distributed links of knockwurst. He met Archreicher and Oddbergson at the bar and ordered his usual tomato juice. Arch says, "You must be quite a connoisseur of that stuff." Qwilleran ran the glass under his nose and considered the bouquet thoughtfully. "An unprecedented vintage," he said. "Nothing memorable, but it has a native charm. Unfortunately, the bouquet is masked by the smoke from Mr. Munson's cigar. I would guess the tomato came from..." He took a sip and rolled it on his tongue. "From northern Illinois. Obviously a tomato patch near an irrigation ditch, getting the morning sun from the east and the afternoon sun from the west." He took another swallow. "My palate tells me the tomatoes were picked early in the day, on a Tuesday or Wednesday, by a farmhand wearing a band-aid. The Merturo comes through in the aftertaste." "You're in a good mood," said Arch. "Yep," said Quill. "I'm moving out of the plastic palace. I'm going to rent an apartment from Mount Clemens." Archie set his glass down with a stud of astonishment, and Oddbergson choked on cigar smoke. "A furnished apartment on the first floor. Very comfortable. The rent is only $50 a month." "50? What's the catch?" said Odd. "No catch. He just doesn't want the house sitting empty when he's out of town." "There's got to be a catch," Odd insisted. "Old Monty's too tight-fisted to give anything away. Sure, he doesn't expect Sure he doesn't expect you to be a cat sitter when he's out of town? Quit being a cynical press photographer, Qwuilleran said. You know, it's an outdated stereotype. Don't you know it's an outdated stereotype? Art said, Odds right. When our messenger goes to pick up the tapes, Qwuilleran sends him on all kinds of personal errands and never gives the kid a tip. It's true, he's got a house full of valuable art? Qwuilleran took a slow swallow of tomato juice. He's got a lot of junk lying around, but who knows if it's worth anything. He refrained from mentioning the Van Gogh. The big attraction is the cat. He's got a Chinese name, something like Koko. Qwuilleran says cats like to hear a repetitive syllables when they're being addressed, and their ears are particularly receptive to plural and varicose sounds. Somebody's nuts, said Odd. This cat is a Siamese, and he's got a voice like an ambulance siren. Know anything about the Siamese? It's a breed of super cats, very intelligent. This one can read. Read? He reads newspaper headlines, but they have to be fresh off the press. What does this super cat think of my photographs? Odd said. It's questionable whether cats can recognize pictorial images, according to Qwuilleran, but he thinks a cat can sense the content of a picture. Koko prefers modern art to old masters. My theory is that the fresher paint gets through to his sense of smell. Same way the fresh ink on the newspaper. What's the house like? Arch asked. Old, declining neighborhood, but Qwuilleran cherishes his place like a holy relic. They're tearing down buildings all around him, but he says he won't give up his house. It's quite a place. Chandeliers, elaborate woodwork, high ceilings, all carved plaster. Dust catchers, said Odd. Qwuilleran lives upstairs, and the downstairs is made into 2 apartments. I'm taking the front one. The rear is vacant, too. It's a nice, quiet place, except when the cat lets out a shriek. How was the food Wednesday? When you taste Qwuilleran's cooking, you forgive him for talking like a character in a no-cower play. I don't see how he turns out such dishes with his handicap. You mean his hand? Yes, what's wrong with it? That's an artificial hand he wears, Art said. No kidding. It looks real, except for the little stiffness. That's why he tapes his columns. He doesn't type. Qwuilleran thought about it for a few minutes. Then he said, I feel sorry for Qwuilleran in a way. He lives like a hermit. He thinks the credit shouldn't mix with artists, yet art is his chief interest. That and the preservation of old houses. What did he say about the local art situation? Arch asked. It's a funny thing. He didn't say much about art. He mostly talked about cats. See, what I tell you, said Odd. Monty's lining you up for a part-time cat sitter. And don't be expecting a tip. The unseasonable weather, warm for February, ended that week. The temperatures plunged, and Qwuilleran brought a heavy pepper and salt tweed overcoat with his first full salary check. For most of the weekend, he stayed home, enjoying his new apartment. It had a living room with a bed alcove, a kitchenette, and what Qwuilleran would call an ambience. Qwuilleran called it a lot of junk. Still, he liked the effect. It was homey, and the chairs were comfortable, and there were gas logs in the fireplace. The picture over the mantel, according to the landlord, was one of Monty's less successful works. Qwuilleran's only complaint was the dim lighting. Light bulbs on low wattage seemed to be one of Qwuilleran's economics. Qwuilleran went shopping on Saturday morning and picked up some 75 and 100s. He had a book from the library on how to understand modern art, and on Saturday afternoon he was copying with a Danish in chapter 9 and chewing on a pipe of unlighted tobacco when an imperative wail sounded outside his door. Although it was clearly the voice of a Siamese cat, the cry was divided into syllables with a well-placed emphasis, as if the command were, "Let me in." Qwuilleran found himself obeying the order punctually. He opened the door, and there stood Koko. For the first time, Quill saw the critic's cat in bright daylight, which streamed through the beveled glass windows of the hall. The light emphasized the luster of the pale fur and the richness of the dark brown face and ears. The uncanny blue eyes, long brown legs, straight and slender, were deflected at the end to make dainty feet, and the bold whiskers glinted with the prismatic color of the rainbow. The angle of the cat's ears, which he wore like a crown, accounted for his regal demeanor. Koko was no ordinary cat, and Quill hardly knew how to address him. "Sahib, Your Highness." On impulse, he decided to treat the cat as an equal, so he merely said, "Won't you come in?" and stood aside, unaware that he was making a slight bow. Koko advanced into the threshold and surveyed the apartment carefully before accepting the invitation. This took some time. Then he stalked haughtily across the red carpet and made a routine inspection of the fireplace, the ashtray, the remains of some cheese and crackers on the table, Qwuilleran's corduroy coat hanging on the back of a chair, the book on modern art, and an unidentified and almost invisible spot on the carpet. Finally satisfied with everything, he selected a place in the middle of the floor at a carefully computed distance from the gas fire, and stretched out in a Leonid pose. "Can I get you something?" Qwuilleran inquired. The cat made no reply, but looked at his host with a squeezing of the eyes that seemed to be denoting contentment. "Koko, you're a fine fellow," Qwuilleran said. "Make yourself comfortable. Do you mind if I finish my reading?" Koko stayed half an hour, and Qwuilleran relished the picture they made. A man, a pipe, a book, an expensive-looking cat. And he was disappointed when his guest rose, stretched, and uttered a sharp adieu and went upstairs to his own apartment.